You see this is a Credit Karma credit profile snapshot of somebody who we would consider to have bad credit. So this score right here shows us a profile where somebody has about a 576 to a 634 credit score, which would otherwise be considered bad credit. Now, there are many people out there that have bad credit, and usually, as you're growing up and going through life, sometimes you might find yourself in a situation to where you have bad credit, and that's happened to me too. Sometimes you get your first credit card or start getting credit cards when you're young, and you start spending, not realizing how credit card interest works and how it can quickly begin to pile up, and it gets harder and harder to make that payment on that credit card, and you get stuck in the cycle of making minimum payments, which begins to drag your credit down. Or sometimes you just fall on hard times. Life happens, layoffs happen, you lose jobs, maybe there are medical bills that pile up, and it just leads you into a circumstance to where your credit profile really sees a downgrade because your payment histories are either not looking great or you're just making minimum payments and the balances are increasing. So there are many ways in which this can happen, and this happens to a lot of people. Now, you might feel ashamed if you find yourself in this position, but don't worry because there are many ways to get yourself out. Now, if you find yourself in a position to where you have bad credit and you are really in need of a car to get you to and from work or to just go about taking care of the necessities of life, I'm here to show you the top 6 lenders in 2023 that are still going to lend to you if you have bad credit. So typically we consider bad credit to be 650 or below. Now, if you don't know what your FICO score is, which is the numbers that I just showed you here, all you have to do is go to creditkarma.com, set up a free profile, and they are going to give you your credit score so that you have an idea of where you stand. So now we're going to get into the mode of looking for a car that's affordable for you and figuring out which lenders are going to lend to you for that vehicle so that you can make that purchase happen, and what are some of the best practices you can utilize so that you put yourself in the optimal position to get a car, and then also work on building up your credit score and your credit history and get yourself back in a good position. So let's dive into it. All right, so here are the top 6 providers. So I'm going to make the assumption that you took the time to go on Credit Karma and figure out exactly what your credit score looks like so you have a ballpark idea of, where you stand. Now, one thing you'll notice on Credit Karma, it's something that they call a Vantage score. So Vantage score almost kind of mirrors what your FICO score is. So it's kind of interchangeable, but the whole idea behind Credit Karma is just to give you an idea of where you stand, and it is pretty close and accurate. Now, there are 6 providers. Now, the first provider is going to be Consumers Credit Union, and they are going to offer you interest rates between 5.5% to 17.5%, and the minimum loan amount is going to be $7,500, and there's no maximum, and they're going to require a minimum credit score of 620. Then we have myautoloan.com. They're going to offer you a 5.39% to a 21% APR, and then they do loans between $8,000 to $100,000, and then they have a minimum credit score requirement of 575. Then we have some online retailers like Carvana, which has lending built into their system. It's one of the few online websites where you can actually complete a transaction on their website, purchase the vehicle, and they, I believe, use a lender called Bridgecrest that is going to help you get that funding for your auto loan. And then here we have a few more. I'm going to skip over to CarMax. Now, CarMax is really interesting because once upon a time, I have some personal experience with them. I had a friend who had a really bad credit. He had about a 580. And again, he went through a divorce, had bad life circumstances happen to him, and that is just where he found himself. And he really needed a car and wanted to build his credit back up again. So we had gone to CarMax. He found a car that he could afford based on his income, and CarMax was able to get him financing through a third-party provider called Roadrunner Auto Loans. So they were able to get him financed, and he ended up paying a 22% APR rate. Now, I know a lot of you watching out there are probably thinking, oh my gosh, these interest rates are out of control. They're as high as credit cards, if not higher. But unfortunately, when you're in a position of not having great credit and you absolutely need a car, you only have a couple routes that you can take. One, you can find financing through one of these 6 providers that's going to help finance you with bad credit, and then they're going to report those payments on your credit history, which then in turn is going to help you build up your credit again as long as you make those consistent on-time payments. 2, you would have to save up enough cash to buy a car outright. Or 3, the reason why I made this video is because I recently went down a rabbit hole of studying and learning about buy here, pay here dealerships. Now, a lot of people, when they find themselves in the position of having bad credit, they think that no one is going to finance them. So they find themselves at these dealerships called buy here, pay here. And basically, these are sort of predatory type dealerships which know that these people have bad credit. They're going to put them into deals where they are charging extremely high interest rates, which legally they can do 20, 30, and sometimes above that percent APR, similar to these, but oftentimes they don't report those payments to the credit provider. Not only that, but they are putting people in cars that are not really reliable, and that they know that these payments are so high because of the interest rate that these people are eventually going to default on these payments. They'll repossess that vehicle, and then they will sell that vehicle to someone else, and the cycle will repeat itself. So that is kind of the downside of resorting to a buy here, pay here dealership. And in my opinion, if you are really looking to build your credit back up, you might want to go through a more reputable lender that's going to report your payments to your credit, and that way you can build up that history of consistent credit payments, and before you know it, you will be able to lift up your credit score, get out of the vehicle that you're in, and hopefully get yourself into another vehicle or refinance that loan at a lower interest rate, therefore helping you build better credit. So all of these little nuanced things that you can do is really so that you can just educate yourself about how credit works and how you can utilize some of these techniques and some of these resources that exist when you think you're down on your luck and that no one's going to provide you any credit. Just know that there are still solutions out there that do exist, and I'm going to post a link to all 6 of these credit lenders out there down in the description below, but so that you guys can check them out. Now let's go over a couple of other things that you can do prior to going through one of these lenders to just put yourself in the most optimal position to get a car loan at the lowest interest rate possible. Now you, of course, even though you're going through one of these lenders who specialize in bad credit and they are going to have a much higher than average interest rate, you still want to do the best thing that you possibly can for your credit profile so that you have as low of an interest rate as possible, because an interest rate really makes a huge difference on how high your payment is going to be, and we want to keep that payment low so that it's avoidable for you, so that you're making consistent on-time payments, and so that you can continue to build up your credit history. So we want to work smart, not hard, and build up those credit profiles. So let's go over a few things that you can do. All right, so there's going to be 5 key things that we're going to focus on before you venture down the route of getting a loan from one of these lenders. Number 1 is getting comfortable and knowing what your credit score is. So you're simply going to go to creditkarma.com so that you can get an idea of your score. It's totally free. You make a profile, and literally within minutes, you will understand what your credit score is, how it became to be what it is. They give you a full breakdown and a report. This is going to give you a good gauge for, okay, do I have a really bad credit score? Is it considered prime, subprime, or is it actually pretty decent? And if I just tweak a few things that are going to be on this list, I could actually be in decent standing. So that's the number 1 thing you're going to do. Number 2, you're going to take a look at what are your sources of income, right? And you're really going to try your best to have as many sources as possible. Remember, when a lender is looking at your credit and they're doing a credit check, they're not just looking at your credit score. They are looking at your entire profile, which is a makeup of all the things that are going to be on this list. So your sources of income are one of those things. They want to know, okay, how much money are you bringing in, and are you bringing in enough money to sustain the monthly payments of this loan? They want to make sure that your income makes sense for the size of the loan and the monthly payment that you have. So you want to make sure you check your sources of income. That's number 2 on the list, and that you are really adding anything that you can. Maybe you can work overtime, maybe you can take on a side hustle just to have more money coming in so you look a little bit more presentable. Now, the number 3 thing that they're going to look at is your debt to income ratio. So we all have credit cards, or we have lines of credit, maybe we have student loans, outstanding debt on, all the things that can happen in life, right? Everyone has that. But the lender is going to look at, okay, all your combined debt in comparison to your income. What does that look like? Can you sustain all the payments on your ongoing debt that you have, whether it's credit card payments, other car loan payments, mortgages, whatever it might be? Plus, in addition to the new potential car loan that you're going to take on, if you add all of that up, does your income sustain the debt that you have? So they're going to look at your debt to income ratio and make sure that if they extend this loan to you, that it's not going to be an overburden on your debt that you already have and on your income source, so that you can handle that. So what you can do to improve your debt to income ratio before you go and get a loan is try and pay off anything outstanding. Sometimes we might have small little bills, small little credit lines, or small credit cards that we just haven't paid enough attention to take care of. So if you can take care of all of that, and these things usually report within 30 days of you paying them off to your credit profile, well, then that's going to bump up your score, and it's going to make you look really good to a lender. So if you can take care of some of those things prior to going into getting a loan, that's going to improve your credit score and your positioning as a potential customer to these lenders. The next thing they're going to look at is your credit utilization. So credit utilization is, for example, if you have a $10,000 credit card, right? And you have used $5,000 out of that $10,000 credit card line that you have. That is what we call a 50% utilization rate, meaning of all the credit that was extended to you, you're using 50% of it. Now, lenders typically want to see you at 30% utilization or below. So they're gonna look at all of your credit lines, whatever form that they're in, and they're gonna see how much of that are you utilizing. Now, if your percentages are like 70%, 80%, 90%, 100%, well, then you're not gonna look very favorable in the eyes of the lender. So you want to bring that credit card utilization or credit line utilization as far down as you possibly can. And if you can get it to 30% or below, then that's really the sweet spot for lenders, where you don't seem too risky to them. And then finally, your on-time payment history. So the thing about credit scores and credit reports when you're getting a loan is that a lender is going to pull your credit history. And that means they can literally see everything from your past, anything that you've had to make payments on, credit cards, auto loans, mortgages, lines of credit, anything like that. They're going to be able to see every single month that you made that payment. What months were on time, what months were late by 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and all of these things play a role in your credit worthiness. Think of your credit history as report cards. So remember back in grade school when we used to get our report cards, come home, and then your parents get to see, how did you perform throughout the year? Well, that's exactly what your credit report and your credit history is in the eyes of the lender. It's your report card and your credit worthiness as, you go through life. So sometimes as humans, and I've done it before too, you can make errors, right? Let's say, for example, you have a credit card bill that's due on the 15th of every month, but you don't have it on auto pay for whatever reason. And you're late on making that payment because you just simply forgot. Life got in the way. Maybe you were traveling, something happened, right? And now all of a sudden you have a late payment on your credit history, even though you could have probably made it on time. So if you tune into some of these things, right, and you set up auto pay and you make sure you're paying off your balances, you make a rule where you don't let your balances carry for more than 30 days and you take care of all these little loose ends, it can really help bump up your credit score literally within months. And you can position yourself in such a better position in the eyes of the lender, meaning you will get a better loan at a better interest rate and they will be more likely to extend that loan to you. So if you can focus on these 5 things, right? Check your credit score on Credit Karma. Pay attention to your sources of income. Look at your debt to income ratio. What is your credit utilization? And then finally, what does your credit history look like? If you can improve a little bit on all of these points or some of these points, it's really going to enhance your credit profile. You're going to get yourself in shape and you'll feel far more confident walking into a dealer or working with these lenders knowing that, hey, I've done my best, I've put in my effort, I'm looking pretty good, I know my credit score, I know my credit history, and I should get approved, right? So you don't have to be sort of afraid or fearful of what that process might look like. All right, guys, so those are the key things that you guys want to follow. I'm going to put the links down in the description below. And if you want to learn a little bit more about how people fall into the trap of buy here, pay here dealerships so that you don't fall into that trap, because sometimes it happens unknowingly, you can check out this video that I made right here and it's going to walk you through the whole thing.